everybody, and welcome back to the Gaming Mix podcast, your official podcast from analogstickgaming.com. If you don't know us by now, my name is Jordan, one of the co-owners of analogstickgaming.com. But of course, the founder himself, Jeff, is to my left as always. How are you, Jeff?
Doing pretty decent actually. Kind of
Good.
awake this time.
Good, yes. I'm hoping your alarm actually worked this week, and you got
Oh
up
yeah.
and
No, the alarm's been pretty good. No, the reason that the alarm didn't go off last time is I had the battery saver on. So what it does is it
ah,
puts a lot of things in sleep.
oh
Yeah.
god,
And then I ended up getting a battery case for my phone.
nice.
'Cause like this was originally like my case, so it's like
Yeah,
anyway,
thin one. Yeah.
this thing's a brick.
Nice.
Like it is just absolutely massive. Like my phone is like freaking brick now. But I mean, hey, it goes the entire day.
Yes.
So
For people
can't fault
watching
it
the
there.
video, I just want to say I haven't messed up Jeff's video side of things. There's just something weird going on with his
I
camera
have.
today. But his audio is still fine. Obviously, let us know if there's any problems, and we can always release an audio only version if you require it. I'll figure out a way to do that. Um,
They say
but
I have a face for radio anyway. So
but before we get to, because we've got quite a lot of news, and actually another thing is this episode will also be coming out either on day of recording or just after, so you'll have another episode that is quite up to date because we haven't released an episode this week yet because the way our recording works, our schedule just got thrown out of whack slightly, so we're now kind of having to release episodes more quickly after recording them. We'll get back to being in advance at some point, but it is what it is. But what I want to say, Jeff, is before we get to the loads of news that we have and the industry falling apart and all that kind of stuff, I believe that we both finished the Fallout TV show. So why don't we talk a bit more
yeah, I
about
finished
that?
it last night.
Because we were quite high on it last time we talked 4 episodes in. Please beware, we will now be spoiling the show. So if you
Yeah,
haven't
it's been out
watched
for a
it
while now.
yet, please go away and come back in a few weeks when you finished it or whatever. Because I know that some people do watch these things weekly, even when they release all at once. So come back to us when you finished it. But Jeff, you tell me, because I actually finished it a few days before you. What do you think of the show
Yeah.
now you finished it?
Well, I'll say episodes 5 and 6 were very kind of story heavy. There's not a lot that happened. I often consider those to be like budget episodes. Those are the episodes where like they're filming in very simple locations. Like they'll just find like a abandoned railway or something, and then they'll just like film the characters walking through that. So those episodes were fine. They were suitable. They were getting the characters where they need to. Even if I think the series has a bad case of characters just showing up at the right time, like they'll find them no matter what. The last two episodes were actually really good. I like how we saw the return of a bunch of characters, especially that uh, guy that's fucking chickens, who's like the doctor or whatever. Then he ends up turning that one guy into a ghoul. Like it's so funny because he's like pointing the gun at him. He's like, "You're gonna heal me," and he's like, and like you don't trust somebody after that. Like
Yeah,
it's just so funny.
yeah.
Um,
Is when
but
later on in that same episode, and the guy gets shot through the neck with an arrow, and he's just like, "Why am I not dead?"
yeah, yeah, no, it was interesting. Like again, I was watching it with friends, and at first we thought that when his leg was healing, that he was just high,
Yeah,
and his leg wasn't actually healing. Um, no, it's like it's a fantastic series. The final episode's fantastic.
yeah.
I mean, we're fucking heading to Vegas,
I
so
mean,
that
yeah. I
is
was gonna say we
exciting.
need to talk about those final shots there of the of
Yeah,
what they
like
show.
like that's the thing too, is like Fallout is generally a Bethesda product now. It
Yeah,
has been since 3 and 4, and even though Bethesda was like involved in like publishing like New Vegas or whatever the case is. That was Obsidian. So like for them to really dive into the Obsidian part of
Yeah.
Fallout
For
is
them to
very
actually
exciting.
pay respect to that, and Todd Howard in interviews also acknowledged, like, yes, it very much is canon, because there were some questions people had over whether they were trying to retcon what had happened in New Vegas with the
Yeah.
show, and apparently that isn't the case. Like, Todd Howard has said, no, New Vegas is very much something we consider part of the canon of the universe. So
Yeah.
I really like to see this, and I cannot wait to see more of this show. It's obviously been renewed for season 2. Um,
Yeah.
I
Like
just go on.
there were a couple bits that I thought was pretty predictable. Like the moment uh he's in that office with that president guy or whatever like that, and you see her picture there, and he's like, "That's not how I remember." And then it cuts to a flashback. I'm
Yeah,
like, he froze a whole bunch of people.
yeah.
That's what happened.
However,
And like,
the thing about moments like that, right, is those moments are predictable because we are people that have played the games. So I'd be interested to
I
see if they were predictable for
I
people who didn't play the games.
I don't think that was predictable for people who played the games for me at all.
Interesting. Interesting.
Um, I just saw it as like that's just a story conceit. Like that's just something that just
Fair.
happens. Like the moment you cut to a flashback, there has to be some type of connection to what was prior to it. So I think that's just storytelling. I
Yeah.
don't think it has anything to do with the games.
Can I just shout out as well how good Walton Goggins is? I know we spoke about him last time, but my god, this guy's
Yeah,
performance, like, especially because he's obviously playing the same character 200 years apart, and how that
yeah,
character has changed over time, and I think there's so much they can do with that character specifically over the course of this show for however many seasons it goes on. Um, and yeah, I'm blown away. Like that moment where he's listening in on his wife in the in the kind of room there in that meeting, and he
yeah,
hears what they're saying, and just the way that his reaction to that moment felt very real. It felt like if anyone
yeah.
heard that, they
And
would react that way.
the moment they're like, "Oh, I'm gonna go get Henry," and I'm like,
Yeah,
"Henry's gonna be Hank."
yeah,
Like, again, like it is a very kind of predictable show in a lot of ways.
yeah,
I think that characters find each other
yeah.
way too quickly.
Hmm.
Um, but
Yeah.
again, like
I
it's a
also
video game
think that
property.
part of the reason for that might be sort of like Game of Thrones season 1, right? Where in season 1, pretty much all of the characters interact in some way, and then they
Yeah,
kind of separate and go on their own adventures. And I feel like that might be the case here, where this was all kind of set up for whatever they've got planned, because Jonathan Nolan has done a few interviews now where he said, like, they did come into this with a 2 or 3 season plan for it off the bat,
mm,
because he said you can't plan to do this kind of show and just have one season in mind, because otherwise by the time you get to the end of the season you then have to figure out what to do next. They've already got that stuff in the bank, um, and given how successful this has been, I think, this is going to go on probably for more than season 2 as well. I would imagine there's going to be a season 3.
yeah. I mean, it's not Netflix,
Yeah.
so it's guaranteed to at least continue on in some fashion. Like this to me joins the likes of something like Arcane,
Mm-hmm.
um, where it it pulls from a different concept of its lore. Like
Yeah.
it's canon to what has come before, but it's exploring other aspects and other avenues
Yeah.
of it with respecting the property.
And
This is the
one thing I
opposite
think,
of Halo.
yeah, one thing I think they can do really well in the show, which is harder to do in the games, And they actually mentioned this. I think Todd Howard and Jonathan Nolan mentioned this in their interview with IGN. Is that in the show, it's actually easier to do the flashback stuff and explore what happened before and immediately around the time of the bombs dropping, because
Yeah.
it's just, that stuff is more, and like you said, it adds extra context to the games as well, and I think they've done a fantastic job. I think it takes a different angle on what a video game adaptation can be. I think that we've seen a few different angles now in terms of, you've obviously had the movies of Sonic and Mario, and they're very much doing their own thing. You've had Arcane, which is kind of like its own spin-off thing. Um, and then you've obviously had Last of Us, where HBO sort of went the route of, well, this game is very cinematic already anyway, so let's make a few tweaks and just kind of retell the same thing, which also does work when the story is strong and people like it.
Yeah.
And then you have
But
this.
it also works. Like The
Yeah.
Last of Us also works because for me, I don't find the world interesting, so I don't find there would be a story within that world that would be as interesting.
Yes.
So when you're very character dependent like that, because with Fallout you're not character dependent, you're creating your
Yeah,
character, so therefore
that's
there
just
isn't
where I
a
was gonna go.
tie
Is
to that.
with Fallout, they have the freedom that they can actually tell a lot of stories, and I'm not saying this will happen, but I could actually see there being spin-off Fallout TV shows where you have, eventually, this will be like the main series, and then you'll have maybe another series which is a completely different vault in a completely different part of the
Here,
country.
here's the thing. I would not do another vault. Don't do another vault. You are already doing a vault story. If you're going to do anything, do like New Vegas Rangers and just make it a complete action type of focus thing, like a 6 episode thing where it's like a mission, whatever. Don't do
Yeah,
another vault. We've seen that done already.
you could do like a completely different thing and base it on. Yeah, that's true. Actually, I didn't even think about that. That would be a really good way of doing it. But
Because we saw the Ranger in the episode 8.
Yeah. But speaking of Fallout, let's move on to some slight news, because yesterday, of course, we did mention it last week, but at time of recording yesterday, the Fallout 4 Next Gen patch released. I will speak a little bit more about that later on. But there is apparently a weird bug in the Xbox version right now where only the
PlayStation version.
Yeah, and the PlayStation version, but one of the guys from Digital Foundry has said that at the moment only the performance mode is working on Xbox. So the graphics mode or the performance mode off basically just runs in performance mode, which is really weird.
And PlayStation, they can't play the DLC or something like that.
I think that because it's available on PlayStation Plus, people who don't own the game but only have it through PlayStation Plus are not getting access to the next gen version, I believe, is what I've seen. Bethesda have confirmed that is a bug and they are fixing it. Obviously, the typical thing has also happened where, because Bethesda have done a major update to the game, it's also broken a lot of mods, so people are having to go back and fix mods and that kind of stuff.
Fallout London, apparently, is like just fucked.
Yeah. So because that was meant to release, like fully release around this time, and I think the developer of that mod has said, like, no, we're now going to have to push it back because they didn't even make us aware that this new version was coming so soon, kind of thing. So it's going to be interesting to see that. I know people have been long awaiting that one because it's essentially a whole new world. But yeah, now is the time to revisit Fallout. And we also saw that Fallout 76, I believe, for the first time, actually had 1 million players in a single day. So that was, that's a huge, for a game that was dead at one point. That is a huge success.
It was panned by pretty much everyone. Like, I had played it. I think I reviewed it. let's see. Let's dip into the old
Dip
Google
into the catalogue here.
catalog.
What did Jeff give Fallout
Gaming.
76?
Let's see here. Fallout 76. Yeah, there we are. All right. Let's see. We're gonna scroll down to the bottom
What did
here.
it get, Jeff?
Ooh, I did not like it.
Oh,
I'm gonna have to revisit and see if I liked it. I gave it a 5.5 out of 10.
oh.
All
Well,
right. So it
I
says
got a
Fallout
review
76.
question for you there, Jeff. Um,
Yeah.
with a game like that, if you were to revisit it, and this is a conversation for us, but I like to involve people in these kind of conversations as well. With a game like that, if you were to revisit it and find that you didn't think your original score any longer reflected the game, how would you go about either re-reviewing or adjusting your review? What would you do in that situation?
Um, I don't know if I don't know if I would even have the time to really kind of put 76 through its paces again. Because like the thing about it as well is this review was back in 2018.
And there's so much more
I'm not,
content now, right?
yeah, like I would have to read my review over again to get a sense of where I was
Hmm.
kind of at that point. Um, but
Yeah.
yeah, no, I have. So Fallout 76 is a title that both excites me as well as disappoints me at the same time. Exploring this massive area of West Virginia is extremely fun, despite how hollow it can feel without a single living soul to encounter. I talked before about how every person you come across is another player, and frankly, I've maybe come across a dozen or so in my travels. Had each instance been filled with hundreds of players rather than the 24 we currently have, then okay. I could see how this could work, but as it is, Fallout 76 feels largely empty no matter how many people you encounter. Fallout 76 does play like a Fallout game, but the framework around it, making it online, makes those systems clash with what it wants to be. I can see what Bethesda wanted to do, but frankly, I think we are months, if not a year away from seeing exactly what this title was truly meant to be. Um, so yeah, like it's at a point now where I think that game is what it kind
Try
of
6 years
should have been.
away, Jeff.
Oh, I know.
We were 6 years away from what this title I think was meant to be.
I should edit it going 6 years, winky face. Um, but yeah, like it's one of those things where like Fallout 76, I think, is at the point where it kind of should have been what it was
Yeah,
at the
absolutely.
time.
I think that it's really interesting to look back and sort of let's go on a little tangent here before we get to the full news because we do actually have some time today, so that's good. I'm not in a particular rush. But I would love to, like, in hindsight, if Fallout 76 had launched how it is today, I wonder how different the story of Fallout 76 would be in terms of how it got received and then how it went on to become, would it have been one of the massive sort of live
Well,
service successes or would it have still have had a fairly niche audience?
I think one of those. I think the biggest question is not so much like how it would be received, because like you take a look at how it how it launched, and it wasn't great, it wasn't amazing, and then suddenly it became amazing and it's great. So it's had that glow up, and that glow up is part of the conversation that makes it more
Yes.
impressive. So if it had already launched without any type of glow up,
Yeah,
then I don't
it's
know
true.
if it would have been
It
as
is
massively well received.
it's kind of like why No Man's Sky is so well respected, right? Because they stuck with the game and improved it massively over time. And there is
Yeah.
something about that sort of success story. And I think that Fallout 76 seems to have been that. Like, okay, it's not getting hundreds of thousands of players concurrently on Steam, but I think they did break their own record. I think they got up to about 80,000 and
Yeah,
like I
it's
said, they
more
didn't.
popular now than it ever has been.
Yeah, and they did announce on their own, like I said, on their own sources that the game across all platforms did manage to get 1 million players in a single day. There aren't many games that get that. Like, if you're getting 1 million players a day, and if they can maintain that sort of level of interest in the game, that's a massive success. Like that's a really
Yeah,
big
it's
success.
been 7 million players have jumped into some Fallout game
Yeah,
since the Fallout show. So I mean, it's
which is
doing exactly
crazy.
what it needs to do. And
It's
like the thing
doing
is,
what the
like,
Halo show should have done for Halo.
yeah, like if the Halo show had been handled by showrunners that were remotely capable, even remotely capable, even remotely capable, and
Yes.
Halo would have definitely been seeing some increase. But that show
Yeah.
is just absolute. Like I won't watch season 2. I have no
100%.
interest.
100% agree with you there. But yeah, moving on from Fallout, I believe we actually have a lot of news. Some of it bad, some of it sort of a bit indifferent, and some of it quite good and funny actually. So why don't we get to the news?
Yeah. Before we get to news, Jordan, just letting you know, we're branding as Analog Stick Gaming and Friends. So that's going to be, I
Is that to
sorry
make
to
us
sorry to.
seem more friendly to everybody? Is that what it is?
Oh yeah, of course. And completely unrelated news. Swedish game and media holding company Embracer Group has announced its plan to split into three separate entities. The group will separate into three companies: Asmodee, which people are just going to call it Asmodee just because it's Embracer. Coffee Stain and Friends. Sorry, uh, Coffee Stain and Friends. All
Coffee
right.
stain and
Um,
friends.
I don't know who got that approved. Coffee Stain and Friends, and then Middle Earth Enterprises and Friends.
That one doesn't make sense at all. Coffee stain I can actually let go of slightly because
Coffee. There's a developer called Coffee Stain.
yeah,
Like I wonder if they're going to like launch any type of like legal action to change that. But I mean, who thought Coffee Stain and Friends
yeah.
was a
A-
good name?
And also, let's give a little bit more detail on this. So one of these companies, I believe, is going to be board games only. Is that correct?
Yeah, so let's jump into the news here. So this is brought to us by Video Games Chronicle. The group will separate into three companies, as listed there. Each will be a separate company on the Nasdaq Stockholm. As part of this separation process, Embracer has entered into a new financing agreement through Asmodee, which is worth 900 million. Embracer says the proceeds from this will repay existing debt and reduce leverage in the remaining Embracer group. Asmodee will continue to operate as a publisher and distributor of board games, trading cards, and digital board games, and will consist of 23 fully owned studios. Coffee Stain and Friends will focus on PC, console, and mobile games, including community-driven free-to-play games, live op games, and indie and double A games.
Yeah.
It will operate under premium and free-to-play divisions. The premium segment will consist of Coffee Stain, THQ Nordic, Ghost Ship, Tuxedo Labs, Tarsier, Amplifier Game Invest, and others. So I wonder if I've got more here, but uh, so Coffee Stain is getting the big glow up here for
They're
the
getting
name.
the majority of stuff, right? They're getting like
Yeah.
because
So
most of
so
Embracer,
is
like not to be disrespectful to Embracer, but most of their games are of the double A variety, aren't they? So
yeah, but isn't THQ Nordic bigger than Coffee Stain?
I think so. I think so.
Why wouldn't you just call this like THQ Prime or something like that?
Or just THQ. Just go back to the standard name because you own it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Like, I think that's a bigger name than Coffee Stain. Either way. Finally, Middle Earth Enterprises and Friends will be a creative powerhouse in AAA development and publishing for PC and console. It will own the Lord of the Rings and Tomb Raider IPs, along with the likes of Dead Island, Metro, and Kingdom Come Deliverance. Studios joining Middle Earth Enterprises and Friends will include Crystal Dynamics, Dam Buster, Eidos Montreal, Flying Wild Hog, Tripwire, Vertical Games, Warhorse Studios, and 4A Games.
Yeah. So
An open
basically
letter
the
to shareholders.
the top tier studios.
Yeah, but I mean, like you call it Middle Earth and Friends, and I'm sorry, all I can think is Lord of the Rings. I don't think
I know.
Metro 2030,
I agree. Is
2033 or
that
whatever.
that in particular
Like,
is a very bad
is
name.
that canon? Is that canon to Lord of the Rings? Like, are we gonna have like hobbits showing up in the sewers of Moscow? Like, it doesn't make any sense. Like, are we
there,
gonna have Dead Island 3 and it's gonna take place in like friggin',
there is
I don't know,
so
the
many
Elvish
names
village?
they could have used. Like literally anything better than that. Hell, I would have sold them the Gaming Mix name if they would have liked. They could have called it the Gaming
Gaming
Mix.
Mix and Friends. For the thumbnail, I was gonna get a picture of like Gandalf with a coffee cup, but all I can find is AI art, and I don't know if I want to promote AI art.
Absolutely not.
Um, So here we go. In an open letter to shareholders, Embracer CEO Lars Wingfors said the decision to split the group into three entities will help them work to different strategies. There is not one way to do business, but some business models are more similar than others. The same goes for business people. The ambitions may be similar, but the approach differs. The similarities between the business that will make up Asmodee, Coffee Stain and Friends, and Middle Earth Enterprises and Friends are striking, but so are the differences when it comes to go-to market strategies and business profiles. All the companies that have bright futures ahead, but by perfecting what is working for each of them and by continuing to cooperate when it makes sense. There is significant untapped potential within the group, which I am confident the new structure will unleash. This will empower each individual and each team to grow and excel further in their careers, as well as provide them with their own leadership and strategic direction. So, this is such a weird thing. Like, they think that a name change and all this kind of stuff is going
So,
to, like,
to me, what this is a sign of we messed up, and in order to survive, we need to actually split up into three different companies. Um, because look, we know how bad that situation is over there. I and I could be completely wrong about this, but I'm going to make a bet right now that Middle Earth and Friends is sold within a year of existing. Like, I think that somebody, to me, splitting up these assets and separating them from each other screams of let's make these things easier to sell. That
yeah.
I could be wrong. That's just how it looks to me, especially because the naming conventions is weird. Like, are you really gonna keep your company name as Middle Earth and Friends? Like, come on. All that people are gonna think of when they hear that company is Lord of the Rings. And yet you've got the Tomb Raider IP in there. You've got, hell, I know it's not as
Yeah,
big,
that's
but
going to Lord of the Rings now.
like Tomb Raider, Kingdom Come Deliverance, which is getting a new game this year. You know, it's like, come on, like
Yeah.
I actually laughed when I saw this news. I found it laughable. And look, one thing I will say is I think this is really good news for all of the developers. I do actually believe that part of it because I do think splitting up the assets here will help to protect more jobs and things like that. Um, just due to the way that businesses are run, I think that, you know, there won't be quite as much debt against any one of these individual
Yeah,
parties.
but isn't splitting off the same thing that Xbox and Microsoft kind of did for their gaming division, and that didn't protect jobs?
I mean, kind of, right? But the difference in that situation is that Microsoft Gaming is a subsidiary of Microsoft itself still, whereas my impression of this news is Embracer Group will no longer exist and they are becoming three different companies.
Yeah, I don't know. It just feels like they're kind of running from bad PR,
Maybe you
especially
could
with
be
like,
right.
Google searching and stuff. But
I mean, especially with the naming conventions, like everyone's pointed out, why the and friends bit? Is it to make you sound, you know, better to everybody else? It's very weird. It's very very
Coffee
weird.
Stain and Bitter Enemies. Yeah.
Like, it's very weird because to me, it's you have some big studios that you could have named these individual companies after. Like we were saying, hell, name one of them THQ. Like, literally call it THQ. You know, or it's so strange to me. It's so strange. I still think we haven't seen the end of Embracer Group being in the news and Embracer Group assets being sold. I think that's going to continue to happen. But, and look, I don't know the exact numbers, but I'm pretty sure that at some point Embracer Group owned over 100 studios and had like hundreds of games in development.
It was like 126 or something.
Yeah, and I think that at the end of the day, that's what happens when you own this many studios, and that's why I always found it laughable that everybody got a bee in their bonnet around Xbox acquiring studios and having 36 studios or whatever it is they have
Yeah.
now, and yet compared to Embracer, they literally have nothing. You know, it's so laughable to me. So I'm gonna keep a keen eye on this situation to see what happens as these companies begin to form and hopefully function on their own and sort themselves out. Essentially. What
All
other
right.
news do we have here, Jeff?
All right. So People Can Fly have canceled a co-op action RPG codenamed Project Dagger after several years of development. Spotted by Twitter user Marl NL, the Polish company informed investors this month that work on the game was discontinued on April 5th. It said it had decided to cancel the project after reevaluation of the scope and commercial potential of the game. Cancellation is expected to negatively impact People Can Fly's standalone financial results for 2023 by 16.9 million and its consolidated financial result by 19.75 million. The company behind Painkiller, Bulletstorm, Gears of War Judgment, and Outriders have been planning to self-publish Project Dagger after it was dropped by original publisher Take-Two Interactive in 2022. According to People Can Fly's website, the AAA action was a co-op action melee RPG. Develop was being led by its New York studio, and at least 50 people were working on the game at one point. This sounds like another Remnant style game
Yeah, it does. It really does.
in a lot of ways. At
It,
least the description.
so I'm gonna give a little bit of insight here. I don't know much about this particular situation, but I do know that at some point over the last few years, People Can Fly were actually working on a game with Xbox. Xbox was publishing a game for them, and I don't believe that was this game, so they might have another project in the works. But what I would say is, look, this kind of stuff is a shame, and I've said it before. I want more games and I want more people doing interesting things. And whenever a project like this has to be cancelled, it's because I guarantee you they would have looked at something like what Ascendant Studios just did, right? And always a new IP, but no one really bought into it. And they'll go, okay, our game's not quite as commercially viable now. Should we just stop? Do you know what I mean? It's one of
Yeah.
those things where when games are not being supported, especially new IPs, it's really hard to then take the risk in making a new IP. Um,
Mhm.
so I feel really sorry for them, and I feel sorry for anyone who inevitably will lose their job because of this. There will be people that with this project cancellation, there will be people that will lose their jobs. Because that just happens. There are, even when you have a studio working on a game, they still employ contractors that are specific to that project, and that once that project is done or cancelled or whatever, those people are gone. They're moved on. Sometimes, if they're lucky, they're retained to work on another project. So I would hope that uh, the studio has another project going on. I believe that they do, but I can't confirm that just because, like I said, the last time I heard this thing about them working on a game with Xbox was around 2 years ago, and the industry has changed a lot since then. So who knows what's
Yeah.
happening? And I'm just very sorry for this happening, really. And I want to see, my call to people is, please start supporting newer IPs and new games, because you say you want them all the time and then you don't support them when they come.
Yeah, they're like, no, not that.
Yeah, so, how are these studios meant to take the risks you want them to take if you're not supporting them taking risks? We have to remember that this thing is a business. Like, and if you want something, you have to invest in it and you have to believe in it. And that's why I'm a really big fan of something like Kickstarter, right? Is because those are projects that are funded by the community because the community want those games. And yeah, those games don't get the big budgets or whatever because not enough people are willing to take that risk. But at the end of the day, if you truly want new things, you need to start supporting new things. And we'll talk more about games getting lost in the shuffle later on, um, when we talk about some discourse around a certain game very recently. But for now, Jeff, should we move on to the next piece of news?
Sure, just give me 1 second here. Sorry, I'm just prepping something here. All right, let's take a look here. What do we got here? So, Gears of War actor is seemingly teasing a June reveal for Gears 6. I'm going to lightly dance around this story just because it's got spoilers for Gears 5 in it.
Yes.
So, the actor who plays JD Phoenix in the Gears of War franchise appears to be teasing plans for a new series entry to be revealed in June. Microsoft has said it's planning to hold its traditional Xbox Summer Showcase in June, when it's expected to offer up new looks at upcoming releases like Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, Avowed, or History Unfold, and Powerborn. It claimed recently that the event is planned for June 9th, and that Microsoft is preparing to announce a new Gears of War and Call of Duty game at the show.
Neither of
So,
those things would surprise me.
yeah, in a Twitter post on Thursday, JD Phoenix actor Liam McIntyre also appeared to imply that we'll hear about the follow up to Gears 5 at the Xbox Showcase. Let's skip the spoilers here. Um, so, McIntyre's response to a tweet was, in regards to a story moment. I have no idea, but I think Gears of War tells us all in June. So according to Microsoft, Gears of War has sold over 22 million units and has grossed over $1 billion when the company acquired the franchise from Epic Games in 2014. Since buying the IP, Xbox has released two mainline series entries in the forms of 2016's Gears 4 and 2019's Gears 5, both of which were developed by the Coalition, as well as Gears of War Ultimate Edition and the turn-based tactic game Gears Tactics. The Coalition said in May 2021 that it was preparing to transition to next-gen development using Unreal Engine 5, but that it wasn't planning to announce any new games in the near future. It was claimed that last February that the Coalition has shifted its full attention to the next entry in the Gears of War series after two other games in development at the studio were canceled. Um, so yeah, like this is predictable.
Yeah.
I think we were
I, I,
expecting another
I
Gears game to come, but
so I don't know anything particularly, but what I would say is Jeff Grubb, who is fairly reliable with this kind of stuff, mentioned a
yeah,
few weeks ago that he expects to hear something from Gears 6 this year and most likely at the showcase. My
yeah,
my assumption would be that it gets revealed this year for release next year. Um
yeah,
and look, this is one I'm excited for, but I'm excited for not just because it's Gears, but also because it's the Coalition releasing their first Unreal Engine 5 game. And
yeah. And they're a studio that knows how to fucking use it.
yeah, so it could be one of the first games where we really see the power of that engine. Because, look, we've got Hellblade 2 coming up. That looks fantastic. But obviously, it's a smaller scoped game. Um, And I just think everything that I have heard, the little whispers I've heard around, is that if people think Hellblade 2 looks good and is technically impressive, then they're going to be blown away by the next Gears game. And that excites me. That sort of whisper going around really excites me about what have they managed to achieve, because we know that they worked directly with Epic on the Matrix demo, right? So it's like they were one of the first studios outside of Epic to have hands-on with the engine. So they've literally spent years at this point figuring out that engine, figuring out how to get the most out of it. And I have seen some people say this, but I think it's true. Gears 6 could be a real technical showpiece for the Xbox consoles in the way that the original Gears game was back in the day. Do you know what I mean? I really do think that. And I think that, you know, there's no better time to probably get into Gears. If you haven't played, I know quite a lot of people who haven't played 4 or 5. So if you haven't played the last 2 games, go and play them because they are good. Like, I think they got lost in the fact that they released during a generation where everybody wanted to pretend that Xbox never had a good game in their life. Like,
Yeah.
And those 2 very, very good games really got lost. I also enjoyed Hivebusters, which was a little bit of DLC.
Yeah, it was really good.
So yeah, I can't wait to see if we do hear more from Gear 6. But while we're on the subject, because the showcase was brought up, I do think they will announce a Call of Duty. I think that's pretty evident that they're gonna, because that's a big moment for them. Obviously,
Yeah,
it's
we just
not.
gotta wait for an NBA player to have a Call of Duty hat at a game again.
Obviously, it's not exclusive, but them being able to announce that, especially if it comes with day one on Game Pass at the end of it, that is a massive, massive thing for them. And an extension of that, I actually think that announcement, because everyone's been going on about, oh, why haven't they done with anything with the Activision games yet on Game Pass and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, I guarantee you it's because they're waiting and they're getting it ready so that they can do a big thing all at once. I'm not
Yeah,
saying...
there's probably a lot of legal issues too.
Yeah,
A lot of this stuff is planned so
because
far in advance. It's like,
I was going to say, because knowing Xbox as well and how they've been with backwards compatibility, I wouldn't be surprised if they're trying to figure out licensing issues for some of the old Activision games and then going and looking at those games and saying, okay, how can we improve them with the way we run our backwards compatibility, you know? Can we put them in FPS boost mode? Can we add auto HDR? All that kind of stuff. And I'm not saying this will happen, but I wouldn't be surprised if they do a massive Activision Game Pass available now drop for the Activision back catalogue around the time of the showcase. Like, I can imagine them saying, okay, we've just announced the new Call of Duty Day 1 on Game Pass coming in probably November, but you can go and play every single Call of Duty game right now on Game Pass. Something like that. I can imagine them doing that kind of thing. It's weird, Jeff, because we're getting close to these showcases and we haven't heard a lot yet. We're starting to hear, you know, little rumblings, but what are we? Something like 6 weeks out of these showcases, probably.
yeah, getting there.
And
this year is just flying by because we have another ID at Xbox, I think, on the 29th.
Yeah, the one that's with IGN, and apparently IGN like to just pretend that Xbox has no success ever. But okay. You know, there's that, but
they'll only do the in case you missed it tweet one. That's what's gonna happen.
So, what else do we have to talk about here?
So 2K is facing a community backlash following its decision to ban a popular WWE 2K24 creator. On April 22nd, What the Status, a creator known for uploading content that is usually inaccessible to players, took to Twitter to announce that all of his uploads, which amounted to dozens of wrestlers and other content, has been removed from the game without warning. The following day, he claimed that he had been permanently banned from playing the game online, thus losing access to its community creations features with no option to appeal. We were recently alerted that this account has been associated with inappropriate content, read a message allegedly displayed to What the Status when he logged into the game. This is a violation of our end user license agreement, which every player accepts prior to accessing WWE 2K24 online features. Asked for clarification on the ban, a 2K spokesperson told VGC the player in question has received an indefinite ban due to violation of terms. Mods which negatively impact the game experience for players violates our terms. Our primary concern is a positive WWE 2K24 experience for all players. Um, it's not clear exactly which content was deemed to have violated 2K's terms, but What the Status is known for uploading content that is usually inaccessible to players, such as hidden models of certain wrestlers or characters that appear in the game but aren't playable, such as the in-game commentators. Notably, in WWE 2K24, he uploaded versions of every female wrestler in the game, enabling them to wrestle against male wrestlers, something the standard game does not allow. Due to his reputation for uploading this type of content, What the Status developed a large following in the WWE games community. Following his ban, many players have expressed anger at 2K. Free Status briefly trended in the United States and Canada this week. This trend features thousands of posts in which players express their frustration about the ban. What I'm seeing happen to What the Status is extremely upsetting and disappointing, wrote prominent WWE 2K community creator Omega Man X44. WWE is making a massive mistake and alienating a large chunk of our community. Now, it goes on in the story. Definitely do check it out because it is a pretty lengthy one. But it talks about a bunch of other 2K creators that have stepped away from like a creator program in response to this. Kind of everybody showing solidarity in this player essentially having all the content banned. Um, I'm guessing it was probably him taking characters that were elsewhere in the game and making them accessible in some ways. You're muted.
I'm gonna say a few things on this because I'm probably a little bit more in the know. So I don't actually agree. I don't think that it is because he made characters that were not otherwise accessible, because he did that last year and they didn't ban him.
Okay.
So he did that in last year's game and they didn't ban him, and they knew he was doing it because he had some of the highest downloaded creations on the community creations. I suspect that it's because he re-uploaded the female characters and enabled them to fight against the male characters. I would imagine that's the thing that's tipped the hat here. And I actually,
Mm.
personally, I don't have an issue with somebody being banned. What I do have an issue with in this situation is, as far as I can gather, is there was no warning situation. There was no, you know, don't do this. It was kind of like, yeah, you're permanently banned. Normally, if you get banned, it would be, okay, you're banned for a short period of time, and if you rectify this issue or do not do this thing again, you will no longer be banned. Do you know what I mean? I think there were different ways to deal with this situation, and I
Yeah.
understand the outcry from the community, but at the same time, I do think there has to be some level of acceptance that you cannot just let people do whatever they want to do with a game. Like you can't just let people mod things. Like if it's against your terms, if it's, if there are, for example, we know that Brock Lesnar is in the game, but he's only in a very specific mode because they didn't have time to remove him, right? And the way
Yeah.
that mode works, they couldn't remove him. There's a reason that they don't want him in the rest of the game. Like, there's an actual really good reason they don't want him in the game. So making him accessible would be a problem. And in my opinion, it's not something that you should do. I'm not I'm not saying that you should get a permanent ban for doing something like that. That's not what I'm saying. I want to be very clear. I do think there's a better way for 2K to deal with this kind of situation. But I do find it extremely odd that What's the Status is a really respected creator in the community. He uncovers character models that were meant to be in the game, but because they got released in real life or whatever, they got cut from the game at last minute, and he adds them back in. I understand why that stuff also is an issue, because what people don't understand is, even though it's a mod, there's still legal implications to that kind of stuff, and 2K can get in legal trouble for allowing people to access things that should no longer be in the game. It's a really awkward situation, and I don't think it's as black and white as, oh, this guy is really respected in the community and we love him, so you shouldn't ban him. I'm not saying they should ban him. There should have been a situation where they had a discussion, maybe a warning system, something like that. I think that out of the blue nature of the ban is the issue, and the fact that it's an indefinite ban with seemingly no way to even overturn it is also an issue. I think that at the end of the day, yes, okay, he's clearly done something to break your terms and violate your terms, but if you remove all of that content and just say to him, look, you cannot do this again, I guarantee you he wouldn't do it again. Like,
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm kind of on the fence in this situation, because I do think it's a 50-50. I just think 2K could have dealt with it a lot better, and the way they've dealt with it is the reason we're seeing the outcry here, I think.
Pretty much. Alrighty. So Metroid's Samus Aran missed out on an appearance in Fortnite because Nintendo wanted the character to only be available on the Switch version of the game. So according to former Epic Games chief creator Donald Mustard, who discussed the evolution of the game's metaverse project in a recent interview with GameFile. So Kratos and from Sony's God of War and Master Chief from Microsoft's Halo franchise have joined Fortnite in December 2020 as part of Chapter 2, Season 5's Gaming Legends series. Court documents published the following year as part of a legal battle between Epic and Apple revealed that Fortnite maker had also wanted to introduce a skin based on Metroid mascot Samus, but why one never materialized hadn't been confirmed until now. Mustard said Nintendo declined Epic's offer to include the character in the game. They really got hung up on their character showing up on other platforms that weren't theirs. They would be thrilled to have Nintendo characters in Fortnite, but just only if it's available on their platform. For me and for all of Epic, we're like, that is an absolute must. That they wouldn't agree to that. We want to make sure that Fortnite is the same experience no matter which screen or device you're playing on. See, like, here's the thing is like, if you put Samus and you're playing as Samus on PlayStation, you're like, who is this character? This is cool. And then you're researching who Samus is, and suddenly you're like, oh wait, that's Metroid. Oh, okay, I'm gonna buy a Nintendo Switch. I'm gonna play Metroid. Like it is a good amount of
Yeah. I think that
it you know, no,
I think the issue is Nintendo are very traditional, and they like to keep doing things the traditional way, and it's like, this is our character, he should only be on our thing. Do you know what I mean? Um
yeah,
or or whatever. It's like Mario. They would love to have Mario in there, I'm sure, even, but they would only want Mario on their machine. Um but it's weird because Fortnite at this point, as much of a game as it is, it's also a marketing machine. And you put a few Nintendo characters into that game, and I
Yeah.
guarantee you it will sell Nintendo machines. Like it will. Like it, I don't know. This is a really weird situation. It doesn't surprise me though. Do you find it surprising, Jeff?
Yeah, I mean, I find it like I find it pretty predictable for Nintendo. They've always kind of danced to the beat of their own drum. Um, you know, it's so weird because like there are what is it? Rocket League. Rocket League has it where you can drive around as Nintendo characters, but when you're playing on another platform, you just see a generic car.
Yes. Yeah.
So like Epic has a history of doing that, but I understand with Fortnite because if Fortnite has those types of restrictions, suddenly you're going to see so many other restrictions happen across all of it, and it's one of those things that
And
the moment there's
also,
a crack in the foundation,
yeah.
it shatters
And
everything.
also, Epic have done a lot of work to not to kind of help in a lot of ways about a lot of cross-platform stuff, and they're fighting a really good fight of like, no, lots of things should be accessible to everybody, regardless of what machine they choose to play on, all this kind of stuff. They are a
Yeah,
major. Epic is a major part of the reason that PlayStation started to allow crossplay in the end. Let's be
yeah,
real. That like they really are. Um, and that changed the industry for the better. I think that, look, like you said, Nintendo just have always kind of gone to the beat of their own drum, and they'll continue to do so until they can't anymore. Do you know what I mean? It's one of those weird situations, a bit like Sony sometimes, where it's we want to stay and do our own thing until we have no choice but to change. Um, and hopefully they do change, because I'd love to see some Nintendo characters in Fortnite personally.
yeah. Like and Metroid can use all the advertising it can get. It's popular in certain mindshare kind of moments and stuff, but in terms of sales, like it's still a franchise that doesn't have that Nintendo sale or sale numbers. But
Absolutely,
yeah,
absolutely. It's
it is
not one
what
of
it is.
their like. It's a beloved franchise from Nintendo, but it's not really one of their biggest, right? So,
Yeah, yeah.
what
All
else do we
right.
have to talk about here, Jeff?
Yeah. So sticking with Nintendo, so new details about Nintendo Switch's successor have reportedly surfaced. Long-running Spanish video game website Vandal claims to have received information about the console from sources at peripheral manufacturers. According to the site, Switch 2's Joy-Con controllers will attach to the console magnetically, as current Joy-Cons connected to the Switch uses a rail system. It's unclear if they'll be forwards compatible with the new console. The existing Nintendo Switch Pro controller will work with Switch 2, it's claimed. So there's been a lot of talk about the Switch 2, um, whether or not they're going to use the same type of analog sticks or they're going to use that Hall effect, which is it prevents drift.
I mean, everybody should be using Hall effect sticks if they can, because we
Yeah,
don't want drift on our controllers, please.
but like magnetically, I'm like, I don't know, like how strong are those magnets?
Yeah.
Like, are you going to drop your Switch if the magnets are
I
faulty
think
in some
I
way?
think the other thing is we don't know what the design of the Switch 2 is. Like it could be something that looks very different even from what it is right now.
I don't know if there's much of a difference in design you can do for a portable kind of console. Otherwise, I think like AOG and like Steam Deck and all these other ones would have done something, differently, but they're all literally
Nintendo
just the Switch.
Nintendo sometimes like their foldable things though, with like
Yeah,
I'm not saying they will. I'm just saying that it's hard. It's hard to envision because, yeah, in the current design that the Switch is now, like let me grab my Switch 1 second here, and it's like in this current design, you know, are those magnets going to be strong enough? Like I don't know, but um, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. Like, I really I can't wait to see what they do with the Switch 2, personally.
Yeah, no, it'd be interesting. I just kind of hope that I do hope they go to like the Hall effect stuff, just because it's just a much better technology.
Do you know what?
Um,
I'm actually, while we're on that subject, this is my. I'm not saying anyone from any of these companies does listen to this podcast, but if you do, please, even if you have to charge a little bit of extra money for it, please give us the option for a version of your controller with Hall effect sticks, like an
yeah,
official
like if the
version.
Microsoft controller store, like where you can customize your controllers,
Yeah,
if it allows you to pick like Hall effect
yeah. Like,
sticks.
and I guarantee you those things would sell because people would pay. Like over here, the controllers cost us about £50, for example, for an Xbox Series controller. I guarantee you that most people would pay an extra £10 or £15 just to get Hall effect sticks. Like they would, because they'll gladly pay like 80 quid, $100 for a custom controller. So why are they not going to pay a little bit for sticks that are not going to have drift anymore? To be honest, and touching wood here, I'm actually very lucky. This generation, I've had no drift on any of my controllers on any system. Um, I did have drift on my original Switch, but my OLED Switch seems to be fine. So
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
I've
Here,
avoided it, but it's a big issue.
controllers here are as much as games. Um,
That's
like
crazy.
the Xbox controllers are 79.99. What is it? Dual Sense
Yeah, I mean
or no?
controllers
Yeah,
aren't cheap.
94.99
What for a
for
dual?
PlayStation
Oh
controllers.
Jesus, Jesus.
They're $15 more than the Xbox ones.
But that's what I mean. I do think, you know, I think there is something there of like you said on the Xbox Design Lab where they let you design your own controller. Why do they
Yeah,
not have an option in there for change the sticks to Hall effect sticks and just tell people how much extra it will be? Give them the option. Like it can't be that expensive for you as a company to provide that as an option. And if anything, it probably would result in you making more money on your controllers. you know, so I'd love to see it as we head towards the next generation for these machines, because I don't want to deal with drift for the rest of our lives, Jeff. I don't know about you, but you know, but
yeah,
why don't we speak about? I believe we've got a recently released PlayStation game to speak about actually.
yeah. Let's dive into that. So, um, this is going to be a two-part type of thing, just because we've got more to talk about when it for Stellar Blade. But the director of Stellar Blade has explained that what players are describing as input lag during certain moves is a deliberate design choice. In an interview with 4Gamer, Kim Hyung Tae was asked about the game's demo, and the subject of input lag was brought up. Kim asked why there appears to be a delay between pressing a button for performing a perfect parry or dodge and the actual move being performed. He explained that this was a design choice to keep the animation smooth and said that there's no actual input lag because the skill is activated the moment the button is pressed, even if the animation takes a while to play. In Stellar Blade, there is about a zero point 0.5 second lag between the moment you press the button and the moment the skill is visible on screen, he said, as translated by Automaton. It's a time lag that cannot be reduced any further. We made it so that the character's movement does not get triggered immediately upon button press, as we felt that this would not fit the game's style of animation. Thus, we made it so that the skill itself is activated the moment you press the button, but the animation of the movement follows afterward. Kim added that if feedback shows players feel the delayed animations make the game harder to play, the studio may make changes in the future. This may have already been partly addressed in the game's Day 1 patch, which, according to the game's official Twitter account, fixes the input lag for basic attacks, as well as the timing of blocking and parrying to be more responsive. Um, So this is the kind of thing that for me is kind of what Rockstar does, where animations to me, like for a lot of what they do in their games, their animations to me remove a lot of the fun
Interesting.
because they make them too realistic, and so therefore the animations are too
Yeah.
slow, or
I'm
you're
I'm
like
actually
when you're running.
you're cutting out there, Jeff. I've got no audio from you a second. I think your microphone might be
No, I
disconnected.
was. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay. Like I was saying, it's like you get games where like running has that extra little like stop, so you don't actually stop on a dime. And that
Yes.
kind of stuff just drives me absolutely nuts because it's like, oh, the animations and blah, 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 blah. It's like, no, it's like make the game fun, animation second.
See,
And so for this type of thing,
I'm sort of with you, but I think it depends on the style of game, is what I would say personally.
yeah, like I don't know if this is like a big issue. Like I played the demo. I don't know if there was anything that I found upsetting or anything. So I mean, my game's hopefully arriving tomorrow, apparently to
Nice.
my shipping.
Well, hopefully we'll
Um,
hear
so
we'll
I'll
hear
be
more about that on the next episode of this podcast. Then, when you're able to
oh for sure.
play some and
But
speak about
yeah,
it.
we'll see how that goes. But like I don't know, for me, like if an animation breaks the game in a way that makes it less fun, yeah, like there are games where you can press a button and it's immediate,
Do you
and
know?
you're like
There,
it's possible.
there is one reason that I'm slightly different in this Discord. Um, I actually find higher levels of immersion to be more fun. Like, I know that sounds crazy, but to me, one of the things I find most fun about a game is it being as immersive as possible. And that's why, for example, Red Dead Redemption 2, you brought up Rockstar just now. They've got
Yeah.
animations for every single thing, and I can understand why that drives a certain type of player nuts. I absolutely get it. But there's part of me where I'm like, I love that they've gone to that level of detail and they care so much about their art and the thing that they are making that is like, we don't actually, you know, we want you to have this experience, whether it's the one that you want to have or not. This is the way that we want you to experience the game.
Well, if you take a look at Horizon Forbidden West, there used to be an animation for her collecting every goddamn fucking thing on the ground. And
Yes.
they patched it where you can just run over and she will automatically pick it up.
Yeah, you can.
Way
There's an
more fun.
option, isn't there? There's an option that you
Yeah,
can do the auto
way more
pickup.
fun.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I don't have to stop and be
And
like in Red Dead, and I'm just
I
gonna
think
carve
that
this
that
fucking thing,
I
man.
think that that's the thing I would say is like there should always be an option. There should always be an option for the people that don't want that level of animation and that level of immersion and prefer the faster flow of gameplay should be allowed to have that faster flow of gameplay. I'll talk more about accessibility options later because I've been playing something that I think has fantastic accessibility options. But
I turned all those bitches on,
but
every last one.
but it should be like, yeah, to me it's, I understand what the developer here is saying because at the end of the day anyone who creates a game is well within their rights to make a choice over the way they want the players to interact with the game and the way they want the players' inputs to impact the game. That's part of game design. It's not. Yes, you're trying to make a game that people enjoy, but it's not about doing things just for the enjoyment of the player. And I think that that gets lost sometimes. Is like, there is more to games than just, oh, let's do things that only the player finds fun. It's the reason that the Zelda games recently have things that are bad for you. People hate climbing up walls in rain because you slip down. But it's like, there's a reason that that's part of the game design. You know, they've made that choice. Um, But yeah, if you keep speaking a minute, Jeff, I just have to take a phone call.
Yeah, sure. I'm just trying to actually find this one particular article here because I know that I think it was Jeff Gerstmann was saying that Stellar Blade had some of the worst latency that he had ever seen. Yeah, so Stellar Blade seems cool, but it also has some of the worst input latency I've ever seen or I've seen recently. Had me checking cables and TV settings because I couldn't believe the game was just playing like that. Probably spent more time trying to verify that than playing the game so far. So I don't know if that is like there's pictures of people like holding down a button for like almost like a complete second before like the actual attack happens. Um, so I don't know. We'll definitely have to see on how this
Absolutely.
kind of thing affects it because
I
the game's out today.
I mean, some people would call this issue in Stellar Blade a 7 out of 10, wouldn't they, Jeff? Some people
That's a very 7 out of 10 comment there, Jordan.
some people would say that Stellar Blade is a 7 out of 10. But apparently, Jeff, in this day and age, 7 out of 10 means not good.
Yeah, that's like what I responded to, your tweet there about it basically, where it's like, can you imagine a teacher going to a student, whatever, and be like, yeah, here's your results. And it's like, oh, 7 out of 10. It's like, nice, I passed. I'm like, no, that's a fail. Like that is just the fucking dumbest shit
Yeah,
ever.
imagine if you
Like a
got
7 out of
75%, let's say, on a test,
yeah,
and they said that 75% was a fail. Like, that would never happen.
yeah.
That would never happen. uh,
No, people would be like, be so happy that they got that passing grade. Like it's one of those things where it's like people like I've seen people like on Twitter basically going like, oh, unless the game get if the game gets like under a 90 Metacritic, I don't play it. Bull fucking shit.
yeah, that's a load of
You're
rubbish.
you're playing you're playing 8 out of 10 games and 7 out of 10 games. You're probably loving them, but for your
Something
fucking like Twitter cred,
something has happened over the last few years, and this isn't unique to Stellar Blade, but
no.
something has happened where for some reason a big portion of the audience now thinks that a 7 out of 10 means a game isn't good, and I don't get it. And I think that our friend Sean from Video Games to the Max probably nailed it with his comment on my Twitter post, which I'll get up here and read to you. He said, where is it? Where is it here? Let me just find it. Give me 1 second. I apologise. He said, I wish there was more nuance about this than 7 out of 10 means it sucks. It feels like 7 out of 10s have now taken the form of, this game is not great enough for me to spend $60 to $70 on day one, especially when you have the high quality of releases occurring all the time. But of course, that's too logical for Twitter. So it goes from, this game is still good, but maybe not good enough for me day one, to, this game sucks because it's a 7 out of 10. No, if someone gives it a 7 out of 10, it means they think it's a good game. Like, 7 almost universally across every outlet you can think of, every outlet will deem 7 out of 10 to be good. So, what's going on here, Jeff? Why do people think that 7 out of 10s aren't good?
Well, I mean, they're essentially treating reviews a lot like a light switch. Either it's a 10 or it's a 0. And they don't even they're not even happy when their games win. Like they're just not happy at all. I think it's just like a vocal minority when it comes down to a lot of this stuff where they're just like pissy about reviews because it doesn't match their stuff or whatever the case is. It's the whole same argument of how they'll like
Yeah,
trust a YouTube influencer over like
yeah,
an actual like website that has accountability.
yeah. I mean,
Like they get it in their head,
yeah.
that their opinion has to be right.
I mean, I'd love to say that it's a vocal minority, and maybe it is, but I've
Oh
seen
yeah.
this sort of thinking actually infecting, and I'm going to describe it that way, infecting the more casual audience. Because, for example, my two brothers who are also gamers but don't stay as in tune with the industry as we do, they just sort of buy games and play them, right? But they do look at reviews. And they have even got to the point where it's like, if a game is less than an 80 average, they start to get put off. And I say to them, like,
Yeah.
what you have to remember is any game that is above a 75 average on any of these aggregator sites means that, most likely, the vast majority of people reviewing the game have actually scored it an 8 or above. It just means that it has some low scores in there as well.
Yeah, see, like, I gave Alone in the Dark 7, and I think it's a good game. I gave Outcast A New Beginning a 7.5, and I think it's a very good game.
Yeah.
We have, so like the thing about it,
and that's the reason that us with our scale, we recently changed it slightly, where we now have the words on our scores. And the reason for that is because, these numbers are not numbers on their own are not enough to signify what a game is, and we want you to know, at least for us, when we give a game a 7, we think it's good. But the other thing I want to say is when we give a game a 6.5 or even a 6, it doesn't mean we think that game is bad. Like, there's more nuance to the scale of reviewing on a number-based scale than 7 to 10. And people seem to think only 7 to 10 exists. They seem...
Yeah, because we have, 6.5 we have as decent.
Yeah.
6 I think is just okay.
Yeah.
5.5 is fine. I think it's
and if we were being honest, like, I don't know about you, Jeff, but if I was to give a game a 6, I would probably put in the review, I deem this game as just okay. But there would still be some people that would find this game to be good or even better. Like,
yeah.
Because what a 6 is to me or what a 7 is to me might be a 10 to somebody else. And that's why...
Well, yeah, I mean, there's people saying Suicide Squad Killed the Justice League is their game of the year, and I mean, that is clearly a 4. And we have it rhyming with 4. And that's somehow someone's game of the year.
And so, yeah,
Is it the only game they played?
For me, this is a big issue because this sort of conversation affects the games, and it does affect the developers, whether you think it or not. When you see a game, I don't have a list in front of me right now, but when you see a game that's a 78 on OpenCritic, for example, because we use OpenCritic more than Metacritic nowadays, just because they take into account more reviews and they give you an average across all platforms rather than by specific platform. A game that has a 78 average, I believe, is in like the top 20% of all video games released or something like that. And it's like, oh, a game that's in the top 20% out of thousands of games released every year isn't good enough and isn't worth my time. No, that's not what that means. Like, it really doesn't mean that. And I think there has to be some sort of, I don't know, re-education over the way that games are being scored and over the way that people should interpret what these scores mean. One thing I will say, and I won't name any particular outlets here, but I do think that certain outlets overuse certain scores, and it means that those scores for the public start to mean less because they don't understand. Like, there's not enough nuance in the scale of, like, not every 7 is an equal 7, right? I could score something a 7 that is almost a 7.5, but not quite. And then I could score something a 7 that is better than a 6.5, but not necessarily quite exactly a 7. It's you have to kind of make those decisions sometimes. And I don't know if you've ever been there, Jeff, but you'll get caught between two scores, and you're like, which one do I go with?
I just use a dartboard.
So but I do think, you know, there are certain outlets, and I think everybody will know which outlets they are, where they tend to not use this. They tend to not really score many things below a 7 because they're only reviewing the most popular games available, right? Whereas for a site like ourselves or even Outer Haven, which you can go and check out, we review a much wider range of games. And we have games that are scored very low on our scale. Like, I don't know, what's our lowest scoring game, Jeff?
Fast and Furious Crossroads?
Probably, and I believe that got like a 2 or something.
No. It's crap. What is that game? PS
Firewall
VR.
0 Hour.
No, what is it? Super
God.
Massive Games.
And
or no, is it Super Massive? It's crap.
Jeff's trying to find it now.
It's,
the lowest rated game.
Bravo
on the site.
Team. I think it's
Bravo
Team
yeah.
on PlayStation VR.
Yeah.
I think that's a 1 out of 10.
And it's like, but this is what I mean. So if you look at our scale, we have games on our website that are 1 out of 10. We have games that are 10 out of 10. I've reviewed a few games just in the last week at time of recording. One of them I couldn't even score. There's a reason for that, and that's explained in the review. And then one of them got a very good score, and you should go and read about that, and I'll talk more about that later on. But it's I think that for certain outlets there's not enough usage of the full scale for people to actually understand what the scale means, and that's contributing to the issue. But I just wish that people would get out of this mindset, because I don't know when it happened. It feels, do you know what, actually, Days Gone is 5 years old today. And it feels like around the time of Days Gone was where people decided, oh, if a game gets a 7 out of 10 on average, it means it's not good enough. And it's like, if you look at Days Gone, the average of Days Gone is just above a 70, depending on which aggregator site you go on. That means that Days Gone, on average, is considered a good game. If you actually look more in depth at the reviews of Days Gone, most of those low-scoring reviews are all reviews that were scored as low as they were, mainly based on technical issues. And there's over 100 reviews that are above an 8 out of 10 for that game. You know, it's like... It's this weird situation where people take aggregator scores a bit too seriously, like the gospel truth, and it would be like us sat here recommending a game to people, Jeff, and then if we say a game is bad, those people decide that means that game is bad, like, no matter what anybody else says. Do you know what I mean? It's there needs to be something, and yes, it might be a vocal minority, but, and this is where I want to kind of end with the point on this, that vocal minority hurts the developer and it hurts the game. Because that vocal minority that tell the wider community anything that isn't above an 8 average isn't worth your time, is making people miss out on games that might be their favourite games ever made. Like, I know so many people that are only just recently playing Assassin's Creed Mirage, right? And they're really enjoying it. I enjoyed it at release. I thought it was great, but because it got a high 70s average score, a lot of people ignored it because it was deemed of, oh, it's not good enough, it's not worth my time. And it's like, but in reality, you've played it a year later and really liked it. So you've just, do you know what I mean? It's, there has to be, and like our friend Sean said, there has to be more nuance than 7 out of 10 sucks Like, because that isn't true. And I don't want anyone, and I don't want any developer to start thinking that a 7 out of 10 sucks either. That's the other thing, is like, Stellar Blade is clearly a good game. I haven't played it yet, but it's clearly a good game. You don't get the kind of reviews it's got without having something about you. And I don't want
it's
them
averaging like 8 to 8.5.
Yeah, and I don't want them to see that 7 from IGN, for example, and go, oh, our game's not good. Because that's not even what IGN are telling you. IGN are telling you your game is good. Like, 7 out of 10 for IGN means good. So, you know, that's all I'd say on it, really. I just think that people are a little bit silly, take scores a little bit too seriously, don't actually read a lot of reviews, and don't understand that the score is sometimes not fully reflective of what the game is. Like, you know, because you do have to make a choice. You know, on when I reviewed Alan Wake 2, I can speak about that one now. I obviously gave that a 10 out of 10. It's my first 10 out of 10 for the site. I really loved the game. It's one of my favourite games ever made. But in the course of talking about the game and in the course of writing that review, I almost didn't give it a 10 out of 10. You have to kind of, at some point, you have to make a decision, and you have to go with whatever you feel on the whole about a game. Because there will always be, no game is perfect. Like, have you ever played a game that is perfect, Jeff?
Runer.
There we go. There we go. But yeah, you know, I think no game is perfect. There's always nuance, and numbers ultimately don't fully sum up what a game is. So you should never look at the average score of a game and go, oh, it's below an 80, so I'm not going to bother playing it ever. Like, be honest. Just say, oh, you know, there's too many great games to play right now, and maybe I'll get to it later. Have a proper conversation. Don't act like a game sucks just because. What I don't get about it, Jeff, is that I've seen this happen with games where the average score will go up by 3 or 4 points and it will become part of a different bracket, and all of a sudden the conversation completely changes. It's like Starfield, right? Starfield, on average, I believe is somewhere around an 82 or an 83, right? I guarantee you that if that game was on average an 86, the conversation would be completely different. Because something happens once a game gets above an 85, where it's almost like no one is willing to say it's bad anymore. And then
I will.
and then and then the opposite happens when a game is below sort of 80, where no one in the general public seems to be willing to admit that they like a game that is below an 80 average. And I think that's where it comes down to, is people don't like to admit that they like games that are maybe not up to the standard of the best video games out there. But not every game can be the best video game you've ever played. It doesn't mean they're not worth your time.
Like scores generally don't sway me at all. If a game looks good, I want to play it.
Yeah.
There was an adventure game that's kind of like almost Zelda-like that came out a little bit ago. I can't remember the name of it. It was on for really, really cheap. And I was taking a look at the review on Switch for it. And they were just saying, like, these particular key points are why they don't recommend it. And those were deal breakers for me. I didn't care what their score was. Because I read the context as to why they didn't recommend it.
Yeah.
It's like the performance was just abysmal.
Mm-hmm.
And that to me is more important than what, like, they could have said, like, oh, those issues there, yada yada, we're still giving it a 7 or a 6 or an 8 or whatever the case is.
Yeah.
But I
Like,
read the context of that review, and that made me not buy the game on sale.
Yeah, well, it's like a lot of people I know, going back to Days Gone again. I know probably 10 or 20 people that didn't buy Days Gone because it had technical issues, even though the vast majority of those technical issues, to Sony Ben's credit, were sorted less than a month after release.
Yeah.
Because the reviews obviously were speaking about those technical issues, it made so many people who later on enjoyed the game not buy the game just because of that one point. And I think that's kind of the point you're making, is like the score doesn't really matter. It's more about the specific points which speak to you or don't, right? So if I, in Alan Wake 2, say that the gameplay is the weakest part of the game, but the story is one of the best that I've ever seen, you weigh up for you at that point, what do you care more about? A great story and interesting characters, or some of the best gameplay you've ever seen? There are different things that
Yeah.
matter to different people, and I think that's what we're kind of coming down on here. But I hate to think of developers getting down because players somehow think a 7 out of 10 isn't good enough anymore. And what I would implore people to do is actually start reading reviews, because I think a lot of the problem with this conversation and where it probably comes from is that people don't read these. Like, I guarantee you, most people who were saying Stellar Blade must not be good enough because it got a 7 out of 10 at IGN, I guarantee you the vast majority of those people didn't actually read or watch that IGN review.
And the stupid thing, the worst thing about this is that people only fucking care about IGN when they want to care about IGN.
Yeah.
The moment IGN gives like a 10 or whatever, they're like, yeah, it's amazing. The moment they do anything else, people just lose their fucking shit. And
Yeah.
like they're like, oh, I hate IGN. I don't listen to them. And then they listen to them
Yeah.
when it's convenient for them.
Absolutely. Absolutely agree. So, I would just say please start reading more reviews. Do you know what? If you don't care about IGN, come over here. Come over to analogstickgaming.com. We've got you. We'll do reviews for you. Outer Haven, shout out to them as well, because I've actually been playing something recently that they got me a code for, which I'll speak about shortly. It's not a game that I'm reviewing, it's not a game that I will review, but it is something that I'll speak about. But I believe we might. Do we have any more news, Jeff, to go through before that?
Well, let's go. Well, we'll head into games here because like the other news stories and stuff like that are what they are. Just because we've got a lot of games to talk about as well too. So,
Yes. Who wants to go first? Because you've been playing quite a few things as well.
let's go back and forth.
Okay.
So I'll start, and then we'll come to you, and then back to me, then back to you. So I got a review out for TMNT Wrath of the Mutants. This is a arcade port of the Raw Thrills game. Um, I never got to play this game in the arcade. I didn't have an arcade that was close to me that had it. I remember watching like YouTube footage of the game. It was basically like 3 levels, and then you fought Shredder. It was a very, very short arcade game. This port has 2 brand new levels, which is the amusement park for Coney Island, and it also has Dimension X. But it also has, it says it has 3 levels, but the third level is actually just a couple rooms leading up to Shredder. So I don't consider it an actual level because it's literally just a couple rooms and then you get to Shredder. In the arcade game, when you got to Shredder, you fought all the bosses again. Granted, there were only like 3 bosses. Um, so you fought them again, and then you fought Shredder. That feature is gone in this one. When you get to Shredder, you fight a couple of members of the Foot Clan, and then you basically fight Shredder. So they've added a bunch of new bosses and stuff to it, like the Creep or Creeper. Or I can't remember. I think it's the Creep. And then just a bunch of other ones that are fine, but they're very mechanically similar. You can see that this game was kind of built on a very, very low budget because not much has changed. They got the voice actors from the 2012 cartoon series, um, like Seth Green and whatnot. But then they cut the opening cutscene, so you have no idea what the story is. And then you save April, and I'm gonna spoil the end. So you beat Shredder, and then you find April in a prison cell behind Shredder. You free April. He comes up, drop kicks Shredder in like a bunch of JPEGs that are just flashed on the screen. So it's not an actual cutscene. That would require like money. She drop kicked Shredder, and then the turtles literally said, "Thanks, April. We couldn't have done it without you. You literally just did it without her." Like that's the thing that just drives me nuts. Um, but the gameplay is very, very basic. You have your jumps, your attacks, your special attack that screen clears. Most of the special attacks are pretty much the same across all the turtles. You're usually spinning and moving around. You have 2 assists. I wish there would have been more because you only have Leatherhead and Metalhead. They could have brought in Mondo Gecko or whatever the case is. They could have brought in a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
It's a very, very low effort port.
That's a
Um,
massive shame,
it
really.
and it doesn't have online play. It just has local play. Um, but yeah, it's weird. Like it is still a type of game that I can be like, this is still fun, but it would be way more fun with other people because you have this vulnerability. And I read another review, and I agree with it. Is that this is the type of game that you're playing, and you're like, why isn't there a dodge or a roll to get away from certain things? And it's because the game is meant to be played in co-op where other people are fighting enemies that are coming at you in acts of vulnerability. So like you'll get hit by certain things all the fucking time, and you'll take the hits no matter what.
Yeah.
And because of that, when you find health pickups, you're finding them usually right after you've died, which means your health is already been refilled on the next life.
Yeah, for sure.
Um, Again, like it's short too. Like I beat the entire game in an hour and 5 minutes,
Oh wow. Okay, that's
and they
short.
want 30 to 40, and they want $30 to $40 for that. I don't think it's worth it. If it had been like 15 US, 25 Canadian, then maybe. Um, but yeah, it's just one of those things where it's like there's rarely ever been a bad TMNT brawler, and I don't think this is a bad brawler. I think there is certainly fun to be had here, but it's very case by case because I don't think that this port is as good as it could have been.
Yeah, for sure. I can understand that. Um, so you've obviously been playing that. I've been playing something a bit better than that, Jeff. And thank you to 2K. I got last week. I was given access to Top Spin 2K25, which at time of recording actually sees its full release today. Um, and I have a review over on the website, so go and check that out. But the way I'd sum it up is if you remember playing the Top Spin games around a decade ago or a little bit more, and they were obviously around before that as well, if you enjoyed those, you're going to enjoy this game. This is the best tennis game that we've had since Top Spin 4, back in 2011, I believe it was. Um, and look, does it reinvent the wheel and do massively new things? No. But it builds on the ground that was already there with that game and modernizes it in a way that brings it nicely into kind of modern day and the modern consoles. The presentation's great. One thing I don't mention in the review because it's a small detail, but it does actually matter, is that even the menus are very well designed and kind of easy to navigate and look very clean. There is some sort of store advertisement stuff that's now popped up in the menus now that it's actually been released, because yes, in
Of
in
course.
two in 2K fashion there is, some slight microtransactions in this game, but to their credit, I actually think on the whole they're not too egregious. They do push the story into your face slightly, but that's because you can earn the virtual currency like as you're playing the game, you will earn virtual currency for everything you do. Every match you have, every piece of training you do in the career, you will earn virtual currency.
See, this is like the thing that's so weird is like I'm not hearing any outrage over top spins, microtransactions, over Dragon's Dogma. And Dragon's Dogma, you can't even find them in the game. You literally have to leave the game and go to the store. Whereas Topspin is just kind of like, hey,
Yeah,
yeah, here's a tennis game store,
yeah.
tennis game, and then you can pick this player store.
It's
Like,
literally right there, yeah. On the homepage when you load up the game, it's right there. And look, I do, to their credit, like I said, literally 95% of it is fully cosmetic items. You can earn enough through playing the game to get enough VC for all of these items. Um, the part where it becomes slightly egregious is you create your own pro, right? And you go into a career mode, which is an offline thing, and you can level up through playing there. But you can also play World Tour mode, which is online against other people's created pros. And the problem is, in the player store, you can buy XP Boost, which is, for example, 100% XP for 5 matches for so much VC, right? And that means that for 5 matches, whether you win or lose, you will get double the amount of XP, which essentially means you can level up twice as quick as someone who isn't paying money. And
just play 10 matches then.
it effectively is play to win matches. Where I would say there is a slight difference is that I've played quite a few matches online now since release because I keep playing it, and I'm definitely playing against people who've spent money because like I was playing it sort of like an hour or two after the early access version of the game launched, and I had multiple players which were 20 levels higher than me almost immediately, right? Even though I know that I've played much more of the game than most of these people at this point. And it's like, what I would say is, yes, those levels do help them, but there is a skill level. There is a skill ceiling which can overcome that pay to win aspect. So like, because I had played more of the game at that point, I was beating these people quite easily because I actually understood the systems more easily, and I was able to manipulate and use those systems to my advantage against these people that had just paid money to basically become higher level much more quickly. So yeah, there is that small pay to win aspect, but I do have to give them credit for the fact of, at the end of the day, you can enjoy this game without ever even playing it online, for one. And there is also another completely separate online mode, which is 2K Tour, where you play with actual official players rather than your own created pros. So you can use like Roger Federer, Serena Williams, Andy Murray, people like that. And they all look great. They all have their own stats. I like that you can do male versus female, which is something that we don't see in the professional game, right? You don't see Roger Federer going up against Serena Williams unless it's a doubles match, for example. You sometimes see mixed doubles, but for the most part, you in singles you will never see that unless it's some sort of charity exhibition. So I like that they allow you to do that in the game. Each player does feel distinctly different because their stats and their abilities are they make them play differently. Like, you'll have people that are kind of a serve and volley type person where they'll serve and then they'll rush towards the net. You have some people that play better when they stay behind the baseline, and they do all feel significantly different. So you have to find a play style that works for you. But what they've nailed about the gameplay is it's really easy to sort of adjust the way that you're playing based on how your opponent is playing. And becoming a real master of this game is more about mastering the timing of when to hit shots. And I mentioned that in the review of like there's this little bar that goes up and down, right? And you want to try and basically either release the shot button or tap the shot button when that bar is in the green, depending on what type of shot you're doing. Power shots charge up by you holding and then releasing. Um, Normal shots are also a hold and then release situation, but you can do a more accurate control shot, which is you tap the shot and quick release. So the timing for each of those types of shots is slightly different. And then you have different types of shots within that as well. So there's lots of layers to the gameplay where you can just. I can see there being a really high skill ceiling with this game, and I'm never going to get to that level because I'm a fairly average player. I think I'm like in the top 3,000 players right now on Xbox, which is fairly good. I'm not saying that that's bad,
Yeah.
but I'm also someone that's played the game significantly more than most people at the moment. So, like I said, I do have that initial advantage of better understanding of the game. As people play more, I'm sure that I will not maintain being a top 3,000 player. But yeah, I really enjoy it, and I call it as, the king of tennis games is back, and Hangar 13, who is essentially a new developer for this series, even though they merged with the old developer, so there's probably some of the old team there as well. They've really nailed it. Like, I think it's a very good first step back into this franchise, and to see it return after so long and not fall flat on its face like we sometimes see with other franchises that go away for a really long time, I'm so happy about it. It's if you like tennis or you just want some sort of sports game to play, please go and play this one because it's the best tennis game that we've had in easily a decade, if not more.
Yeah.
Oh.
So I'll move on to one that we've both been kind of playing here, and that is Another Crab's Treasure.
Yes.
So this is kind of like the Souls-like, featuring the little crab. So basically the game kind of starts where there's like this like loan shark who's kind of one of those like little sticks with like little shark head that you like hold a little clasp and it basically moves the mouth, and it comes up and explains to the crab that the lands are the sea and the lands here are all owned by the Duchess, and he has to pay a fee, and he can't pay the fee, so he gets his shell that's on him kind of repossessed, and the quest then begins to find that shell, and you go through a whole bunch of different quests to essentially find that shell. That's the point of the game. But the gameplay itself is that of like a Souls-like, where you're dodging and parrying and you're doing all those types of things. You're playing in that kind of vein. Um, but one thing that's really nice about what Another Crab Treasure does is it allows you to increase the amount of damage you do in settings. It allows you to decrease the amount of damage that you take from
Yeah.
enemies. It allows you to extend the parry window. It allows you to kind of make the game more accessible based on the challenge that you're wanting. And you can reverse that and you can actually take more damage, or you can actually take, um, like you can kind of take the settings that you're doing there and you can kind of flip them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's good. Like my only concern, and we'll get into talking about the game more, but my only issue with the game is I feel that it's not terribly responsive in like kind of dodging and attacking sometimes. I think that not that there's a delay, I just think that the attacks are like sometimes a little slow
I'd agree with
or
that. From I've only played a little bit. I think we've played about the same amount.
yeah,
Which is probably like the first hour or so of the game, something like that. Um,
yeah,
First of all, I do want to shout out those accessibility settings just because there isn't many there, but there are the ones that are there are what is needed for this type of game. Like when I saw
yeah,
the ability to adjust that parry window, as someone that has a disability which does have an effect on my reaction times and mine isn't significant, but people can have much more severe disabilities in terms of reaction time things. I'm slightly slower than the average person when it comes to reaction time. So being able to adjust that parry window to make it, not even to make the game easier for me compared to someone else, but to make the game more playable for me, because I can actually play it in the way that's intended based on my own limitations. I love that, right? But they've gone a step further, because they even make a point of, look, we intend this game to be hard, but if that's not the way you want to play it, that's okay. And go and turn on all these things and, do what you want. There is one
Yeah,
setting
you
in
can
there that
even
I can't figure out how to turn on because it wouldn't let me go down to it, so I don't know if it's a bug. But there's one which is like,
oh,
give him a
gun.
gun. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know that one yet, but the other setting that I didn't mention too was the ability to keep all of your currency even when you die.
Yeah. And that completely changes what the game is, of course, right? Because then you have no fear of death. But I like that, like I said, they're not shying away from the fact, I think, that they know that a lot of people find this kind of game really intimidating. And they're giving you the freedom to make it less intimidating if you would so like to do that. Um, so I like the fact that we're very early, but you can get different shells as well. That's kind of the whole
Yeah,
mechanic
and
of this game.
they'll like break, so you'll get like teacups and bananas and like cans and
And
shot
they all have
glasses.
different stats, right? And they all have different things they
And they have
can
a
do.
yeah, they have like a different ability, like the tennis ball, like allows you to like kind of sprint forward, but then like the can one, you firing off like pressurized like bubbles and stuff, which
Yeah, yeah.
works really good because it affects their stagger meter. So when you get the enemy that's staggered, the health
Mhm.
flashes, and then you do like a charged attack,
Yeah. And
and then
what I
that
will
allows you to
say
kind
is,
of
look,
deal some damage.
this game, if you play it without any of the additional accessibility features and stuff, this game can be quite difficult. It actually can.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that part of that goes back to what you were saying about there are just certain elements of the gameplay that maybe don't seem to react quite like you'd expect. Um, like the dodging is a little bit weird for me, where I
Yeah,
sometimes think I've
sometimes it
timed a
won't even
dodge
dodge.
right and I still get hit. Like I press dodge and he just doesn't get out of the way. It's weird.
Yeah, it feels a little sticky as well too. I don't like how you can't back out of menus with the B button. You literally have to hit like the X to back out and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, like I think it's very good. That's where I'm sitting at right now.
yeah. I am as
I
well.
just got to the just a little bit past the cereal box thing,
Yeah,
where you're kind of on this quest to kind of find something, and then I found a big giant crab that I can't beat yet.
nice.
I think I'm a few levels off from getting to that.
Well,
Um,
if look, what I would say is, because I know people would like us to review this game, and I think that as we've kind of mentioned before, as we're both playing it, it will probably be a situation where whichever one of us finishes it, we'll probably just
yeah.
tackle the review. Um, I suspect that's going to be Jeff because he's more experienced with these types of games than I am. Um, but we'll see.
We'll see, because like the next game I'll talk about is taking up my time as well too, and then I got Stellar Blade.
Oh
That's
yeah, that's true.
I'll
You've
hopefully
got
be getting
Stellar
that
Blade
tomorrow.
coming in, so we'll see what happens. But what I would say before we move on to another game that I've been playing is that if you want to try another Crab's Treasure, please remember it's day one on Game Pass, so you can play it on Game Pass if you have Game Pass. I believe it's also available on PC Game Pass. I could be wrong about
Yeah.
that, but I'm pretty certain that it is, so check that out as well. I do think it's worth at least trying for. I think that within an hour to 2 hours, you'll know whether you're going to like this game or not. Um, but if you want a basic summary of it, it's Baby's first Souls game, essentially. That it's their take on Baby's first Souls game,
I think visually, I don't think gameplay wise though, like in some respects anyways, but I think visually for sure.
for sure.
Because like again, like it is even with the settings and stuff on, like it can still be challenging.
I will say as
Like
well,
that crab is absolutely kicking my ass.
I was quite surprised to see like some nice little voice acted scenes. Like
I kind of wish all of it was voice acted
yeah, so
because
do
like a
I.
lot of the dialogue's really good and the voices are really decent, and then like there's good chunks that are just like Charlie Brown teacher, and I'm
Yes.
like, why you've hired the voice acting talent,
Yeah.
like let them embody
I
those
I
characters.
wish as soon as I started hearing the voices, I was like, "Oh, I wish the whole thing was voiced." Cuz they've done like even just from the early few scenes that are voiced, it's really good. Like the voices are good. Um
Yeah.
yeah. But anyway, I have been playing something else. I've been playing an early access game called No Rest for the Wicked. Shout out to my friends at Outer Haven who actually got me access to a code for this because I am going to be at some point writing a few little things about the game over there. I'm not doing a review, but you know, with it being an early access game, we're just kind of trying to all get
Yeah, I
our
tried
thoughts
getting it and I
together.
haven't heard anything.
Um, and what I would say is, you know, Keith over there has a lot of guides and things that he's been writing. So go and check those out. But I'm approaching it more from, okay, let's play this and see what kind of accessibility it needs because I want to feed back to the team and help them to make it as accessible as possible because in this early access state right now there are no accessibility options. But if you don't know what No Rest for the Wicked is, it's the next game by Moon Studios, the team behind the two Ori games. It's just launched into Steam Early Access specifically. It's not available on consoles currently. Um, Although you can play it through Nvidia GeForce Now, you know, in the browser on your Xbox if you'd like to do that. Um, and it's essentially a cross between a Diablo type game and a Souls like. It has some Souls like elements to it, but it's a top downish sort of view like Diablo, and yeah, it's very very interesting so far. You know you're going around finding different gear. You run into lots of different enemy types. There's a dodge, a parry. It kind of functions as you would expect. Um, but it also has weirdly some Zelda elements to it where you're able to cook meals, like different meals, you're able to find recipes, and these different meals give you different buffs and obviously regain different amounts of health. Um, when you're climbing up certain things, you have like a stamina ring, like you would in a Zelda game. There's a cat currently on Jeff's screen, and, you know, I don't know if there are any cats in No Rest for the Wicked, but if there are, I'm sure you'll probably be fighting them because I've been fighting some crabs recently in No Rest for the Wicked. Um, but yeah, I really like it. I just think that within the first few sort of minutes of playing, I immediately saw, okay, they need this accessibility thing, they need this thing, and they need this thing. Of course, it is an early access game, and they are actually updating it really quickly. To Moon's credit, it has been in early access for a week, and they've updated it 4 times already. And they've significantly improved performance. I know that Keith over at Outer Haven has tried it on the Steam Deck, and he said it works quite well on the Steam Deck now, after the most recent update. So yeah, I would recommend that. Look, if you're a fan of the Ori games, if you like Diablo, if you have even any sort of love of Souls-like or interest in Souls-like, this game combines a lot of different elements and creates something really unique. And I can't wait to see how they build on it and improve it over time because it does have that Metroidvania Ori like part of it to the exploration as well. And the map, for example, one mechanic that I've never seen before in a game, or at least from memory I haven't, is you'll uncover the map, but over time the map changes. So the what you've uncovered goes away. It fades out.
Mm.
So you then have to go back, and it might be. I think it might be a little bit different. I haven't really got that far yet, but it's really interesting that like they are trying to do different things and they're trying to combine different things. And I've seen the developers are really active on Twitter, and I've seen them talking about how the kind of action RPG genre hasn't changed much in like 25 years, and they just kind of wanted to do something that was a bit different within that genre. So I'm really excited to see where this game goes and how they build upon it. But my main thing right now is trying to get trying to get my head around what accessibility stuff this game needs, because I really want to provide feedback to
Yeah.
them and make it as playable for as many people as possible, because it does seem like it's going to be a great game for sure.
Yeah, I've seen like a lot of footage of it, seeing like Andy Cortez play it and a bunch of other people and stuff like that. So like definitely looks really, really good. Um, but yeah. Um,
You've played
Next
something
game
else,
that I
Jeff.
have
What is it?
been, yeah, sorry, she's coughing up a hairball or something. I'm not sure. Another game that I've been playing is Uaden Chronicle, which is the 100 Heroes. Because they had Rising before, which was like a side-scrolling kind of game. This one here is like your traditional like Suikoden, where it's just like a turn-based JRPG. But you basically take all your turns at the start, and then you kind of unleash everything, and then that kind of happens, and then you kind of base your strategy off the order of the enemies. Sometimes they'll go ahead of you, and you'll have to just take the hit. I don't like the fact that it doesn't heal after every battle, so it feels like it's a potion management type of thing in regards to like healing back up. Even the save spots don't regenerate MP or HP, sorry. Um, but it
Interesting.
it's basically a game where um, there's tensions between like two factions, and the factions essentially work together to uncover these things called primal lenses, and they deal with a lot of power and magic, and then that kind of splits the factions apart and creates some type of increased tension there. So basically, you play as a group that is exploring certain things, and you then recruit a bunch of other people. So hence 100 heroes. There's 100 heroes. Spoilers. And you they're all voiced. They all have their own little story moments and things like that. It does follow the same kind of issue that I have with Grand Blue Fantasy Relink, where like some of the additional characters that you add to your party that are optional don't factor into the main story, so you get less moments with them in the bigger picture. Um, but it's no, it's solid. I think visually, I think it's got a few disappointing parts where like some textures just don't feel like they're loading on the ground.
Yeah.
I know there's the Switch version apparently is really bad that they've talked to the I got a press release basically talking about like some performance issues and how they're hoping to fix it. It's on Game Pass. Um,
Yes.
but yeah, no, like you have your overworld map, you're going around the areas, you're buying armor, you're upgrading it, you're getting potions, you're getting abilities and skills and all that kind of stuff that you're adding to that stuff as well. The combat, yeah, like you basically you can do free combat or you can do auto combat. And auto combat just lets it play out. In the smaller battles, I'll definitely do auto combat and just let it kind of happen there. As you get to know each character and they're working alongside each other in your party of six, you'll unlock like bond type of special attacks where like the characters will like team up and do a big powerful attack. And how combat works is you'll have a turn order at the top, and it'll be like red, red for the enemies, blue, blue, red, blue, blue, red, blue, red, or something like that. And then you'll basically make all your turns, and then you'll hit fight, and then it will act that out. And some of the battles, bosses have gimmicks. One of them is there you meet this Sailor Moon character, who literally just looks like Sailor Moon or dresses like Sailor Moon. She says like, "I will, truth and happiness and justice will prevail over evil." Like she has that um that kind of dialogue. And you're fighting this big giant monster, and she's got two books on each side, two grimoires, and the grimoires are basically these like large like mallets. So when an enemy pops up, you'll hit the book on that side, and then it'll use the mallet on the enemies. But it's done random. So like the enemy will be in the sand, and then you'll pick a grimoire, and then you'll hope that they pop up where you've selected that side of the grimoire. So that's like the first big gimmick. I do recommend that if you get to that boss and you've only recruited the Sailor Moon character, you're playing it wrong. You have to go and explore, and you'll find like a whole bunch of other characters that you can recruit and then bring with you to that fight. Because that fight can be pretty challenging. Um, but yeah, like there's a lot
Apparently,
of characters
Jeff,
to recruit.
just to go on a small tangent there because you said something that made me
Yeah,
think of something. Apparently,
yeah,
it's not possible to play any video game wrong, Jeff. That's what I was told.
I don't know, but no, like it's it's like the game is designed around you finding all of these characters. Like you'll find the first guy just randomly in a bar in the first town. And then if you go to the second town, there's like this like prim and proper kind of like mage girl who's like, "Oh, you're so kind. And, like I can't wait to help you." And then like, but these guys show up, and she's like, and the guy's like, "Hey, stop talking to her like that." And she's like, "Oh, don't worry, I can deal with these guys. It's absolutely fine." And then she turns to them. She's like, "All right, listen, you little fuck nuggets," and like all this stuff. Like she just starts going all off on them, and it's so funny. And like you'll win with her in battle, and she'll just like start screaming at them, and then she'll level up, and she's like, "Oh, I've learned so many new things. Yay." Like it's so
Nice,
funny.
nice.
And it's all voiced. Like it's really really good. It is decent. I will say that it is very very decent so far. I'm waiting for like some of the story stuff to pick up because right now I'm just recruiting for the sake of recruiting and all this stuff. So I'm doing missions to kind of like make this like yeah, I think you're called like the Watch or something like that, and it's like a group of like mercenaries that go around and like help. So you're just kind of building your name up until eventually I think it's going to get to a point where you start taking on the Empire. And
Yes, yeah.
based on the cover art, I'm pretty sure that the person on the Empire that you play with in the opening hour, I'm pretty sure swaps to your side because they see the Empire doing something evil or whatever the case is. So, but oh, it is pretty damn solid so far. Playing on Xbox through Game
Yeah.
Pass. Um and yeah, it's really good so far.
Well, there you go. That's another game you can try through Game Pass. For those of you that don't know, Star Wars Jedi Survivor, I believe, also recently just came to Game Pass. So there's a lot of Game Pass options if you're on Xbox right now. However, before we go, I have a few more things to talk about. One game you can play on Game Pass, of course, is Fallout 4. I mentioned it briefly earlier, but I did return to it last night. I downloaded it and all of the DLC because my journey with Fallout 4 is that I actually own it on PlayStation 4 and on Xbox. But I never played more than 15 hours of the game wherever I tried to play it. It just didn't click with me for whatever reason. So I never touched any of the DLC or anything like that. And then I picked up the Game of the Year edition like a while ago when it was on sale for a few pounds, like less than £10, which is nothing essentially. Um, and yeah, I returned to it yesterday, and I I'm enjoying it so far. Like the patch seems to be good. There's obviously 60 FPS. Like I said, on Xbox right now, apparently that's slightly broken. Tom Morgan from Digital Foundry on Twitter was saying that even if you turn performance mode off, the game seems to only run in performance mode on Xbox at the moment. So bear that in mind. But I'm excited to kind of actually give Fallout 4 a proper go this time around and see if I can, enjoy it, because I've enjoyed every other Fallout game in the past that I've played, so I'm looking forward to playing more of that. And the other thing before we go, just because we like to speak about a little bit of wrestling here and there on this show now, I finally got my wrestling tickets, Jeff. So I will be going to Clash at the
Oh,
Castle.
nice.
Yeah. So I'm looking forward to that. Clash at the Castle in Scotland, which isn't too far
Did
from
they
me.
did they reach out to you specifically about your issue, or you just lucked out and managed to get tickets?
No, I managed to get in contact with someone who helped me, which was nice. Yeah. Apparently some people are very nice nowadays, Jeff. There's a certain champion who likes to help everybody. So yeah, there's that. Obviously,
Nice. And that's what is that on the 4th?
that's so
Or is
no
that Backlash?
so that's Backlash, which is in France, and then on the, I think it's the 15th of June is when Clash is. So it'll be the
So
following
that's all right. So
following
I'm off
month
on
after that.
the 4th, and then off on the 18th, and off on the 1st. June 15th.
I believe it's 15th, yeah, the Saturday, yeah.
Yeah, if it's June 15th, then I'm off and I can watch it.
Nice. So yeah, and I managed to get floor seats as well, so I think I'm about 10 rows back, which isn't too bad. It's going to be a decent view there, and I'm looking forward to that. If you'd like us to speak about more wrestling on this show, let us know, because we do now both watch weekly, every episode, I believe.
Yeah, the draft is tonight.
Yes, it's
Or
starting
part
tonight.
one.
So
Part one of the draft.
if you'd like us to have a little wrestling weekly update section, let us know, and we can add that into our runner show.
I wonder how entertaining it is going to SmackDown and Raw when it's the draft.
Oh, I know.
Because you get your tickets and then you're like, yeah, we're gonna see some wrestling, and it's literally just like,
Yeah.
I'll take Cody Rhodes.
Yeah.
And then Cody Rhodes walks over to the Raw side.
I mean,
I'll take Becky Lynch.
I fully expect that they're gonna move Cody Rhodes to SmackDown, just because the way they handled him on Raw the other week was almost like he's not gonna be on Raw again. So I think he's probably gonna move to SmackDown, but we'll let you know all about that.
Because like, we're not gonna get Samantha Irvin then announcing
Yeah.
Cody Rhodes.
Yeah, I know. That does suck.
And that
However,
sucks.
they could draft Samantha Irving to SmackDown. You never know. You never know.
Yeah.
We'll see. Apparently Roman Reigns is away filming a movie, so that's fun for him. He's going to be gone for a while. But yeah, we will.
It's almost like this thing's rigged. They knew he was going to be out.
We will update you on the happenings of the WWE draft, because obviously it happens tonight, the first part, and then the second part of the draft is on Monday, which will be before our next recording. So on our next recording of this podcast, we'll update you a little bit on the WWE draft and the happenings over there. Why not? For now, play some games, stay in the mix, and we will see you next time, but is a goodbye for now.